Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 19th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're living in a world of controversial sports down here in the South as everybody is raving about the negativity that's going on in sports, but they won't stop watching and paying attention.
It's just like it's like a bowl of ice cream. They may say it's too sweet. It's not sweet enough, but they keep eating the ice cream. I want to say Big C Sports is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are growing. So you're saying they're fighting about sports being good or bad, or not enough sports, or that it costs too much to get into a game? What are they fighting about, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, always when there's a low spot in sports, there's always going to be the controversies that arise, just like in all the talk about baseball, and everybody wants to chime in against the commissioner, Rob Manfred, in baseball, and yet he is just a spokesperson for the 30 billionaire owners who own the team. So it's not his decision as far as going in, stripping a title from an organization when you have the strongest player union in all of professional sports.
Yeah, when you have $1 billion on a lot of things, I want to make sure that we pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Line. They have experience in helping veterans and their loved ones. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. If you're online, just go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, it's very important. Just like we talk about all the controversies that are going on in the world of sports today, there's all controversy going on in the life of the great veterans that have served our country every day. And these crises that are in their corner, Charlton, have been life-threatening over the years and caused many of them to commit suicide, which the Suicide Prevention Hotline number is one of those things, hopefully to stem the tide of that, as well as our private citizens who do it every day, especially our young people who are doing it at such a horrific rate. People need to find a way to think about others as much as they think about sports. And those lives that can be saved, where in a sporting event, Charlton, that's just an event that goes on that day and it's over with. We talk about the everyday lives of our veterans in this country, and that our Veteran Administration is not doing enough for them. But the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Mr. Charlton, can hopefully fill in that gap.
It really can fill that gap, but you got to make the call, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. And we really appreciate the way that people are paying attention to that message on many of the national platforms. Now, I also want to mention Big C launching the Big C Real Estate TV channel. It's actually for brokers who want to list property on television, and we're pretty much in most markets throughout the country, starting out here in California first, but launching that in the spring of 2020. If you ever saw a movie called Blazing Saddles, I remember how funny it was. I walked into a new model home construction, and they had about, I'm just being honest, they had about 9 white guys sitting around in polo shirts, And I go in there and I go, before I say anything, the first one guy got up and said, "What do you want?" Usually when you go to look at a new house, how can I help you? Or let me show you our price lines. But I got this attitude, "What do you want?" Big C, you ever experienced that in your life? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I've dealt more in the custom realm, so I've had to deal with those track home sellers.
Yeah, it's custom track. Well, when you got that billionaire clientele, sometimes you tell them what you want, but it's funny. I told them we're putting real estate brokers on TV. Then they all seemed like they were interested. It was just 1 out of 9 stood up at first, but it's all fair and love and war, launching the real estate listing channel in spring of 2020. You know, so much goes on in the world of sports, and you were saying how people are mad at Manfred because you can never really say the right thing. If you've ever been in a relationship, if somebody has it in for you, you can't say the right thing. And if you're Manfred Big C, a lot of these guys that he's a commissioner over, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. So what's there to be mad about, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at these athletes and they feel that they were robbed and someone took advantage or had an unfair advantage in a competitive situation, athletes have always fought back against that. But they're pointing the finger at the guy who is a smokescreen for the owners. And I think that the players are intelligent enough to understand that, that they can attack the commissioners, but they cannot attack the owners, because you have not heard any of the players or really the media attack the owners in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and they're not going to. And you know what would be great? There's only several owners that put themselves out there. George Steinbrenner used to do it back in the day, and he would always make himself known. Also, you have Ballmer down in Los Angeles, of course, with the Clippers, makes himself known. None other than Jerry Jones. I should have mentioned Jerry Jones first. Bob Kraft, somewhat, but really kind of stays behind the scenes. And so you don't, the Buss family at the time, you know, they were pretty much out there. Even Jeannie Buss, when the thing happened with Magic Johnson stepping down, really didn't hear much about that. Are there any owners that Arthur Blank, he's one, I mean, you know about him, but there's a lot of owners, you don't see them because they don't say anything. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, owners are not supposed to be out there in the limelight, Charlton. This is the reason why you have a commissioner to represent the league. This commissioner is always in contact with the owners on a day-to-day basis. He might not speak with all of them daily, but he speaks with several daily.
Yeah.
And so the information that he lets out, it's been approved by the owners. He has script writers, basically what he's going to say. He doesn't have ammunition to go out there and just blurt out whatever he feels like, because he is an employee.
Yeah. Well, he's an employee, and sometimes behind the scenes, there's a reason they stay behind the scenes. They don't want to be well known. I know Al Davis, the late Al Davis, he was pretty much a vocal person. Maybe not as much as Jerry Jones, but he was still out there. And so when it comes to owners, no matter football, basketball, or baseball, they can't please everybody. We all know that. But in the world of NBA basketball, I know they jumped on Manfred a lot. You look at the commissioner of NBA basketball, I think Adam Silver does it right. But for the New York area, judge dismisses Charles Oakley's suit against Dolan at Madison Square Garden for the arrest that he had. The federal judge dismissed the Oakley lawsuit against executive James Dolan in Madison Square Garden, stemming from the New York Knicks forward's ejection in a game a couple of years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. So that's Judge Richard J. Sullivan. He ruled Wednesday in U.S. District Court that Dolan gives him more money than Oakley. I mean, that he didn't have grounds, even though we saw on TV how he was roughed up. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, regardless of what you saw on television is roughed up. What is Madison Square Garden?
Yeah.
Private property.
Yeah.
You have the right to remove anyone from your private property as long as you use proper security measures.
Yeah.
And that's what Dolan did.
Yeah, and that's what he did. And I think even when you think about Sullivan, he was a district judge when the case began, and now he serves on the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. I mean, you can sue all you want. Everyone has a right to do that. But good old boys have always decided to stick together. And do you still, I know you mentioned before, you know, you can't please anybody at times. You can't even do that in a relationship. Sometimes people just don't want to get along. And that's since the beginning of time. But do you still feel, because he had the right to do it, and players who maybe don't want to go to New York, do they know he had the right to do it? Why does it turn off if he did everything right and had a right to do it? Ironically, the judge sided on Dolan's side against Oakley. But did you think that it hurts players wanting to go there? Big C, your thoughts?
I don't think it hurts it at all. If someone comes to your home and starts berating you at your home, you're going to sit there and accept it, or you're going to call security or police to have that person removed. Dolan had that right. Charles Oakley is a ticket-paying person like anybody else. You can say whatever you want to players on the court.
Yeah.
But when you directly attack the owner of the facility, then he has the right to have you removed, which he did lawfully.
Yeah, that's still interesting. A lot of people, it took 3 years to resolve that in the court. That shows you how backed up the court systems are. Also, in the world of NBA basketball, it's been a nice first half of the season. Seen some great play. The Lakers, of course, in first place in the Western Conference. You have Milwaukee in first place in the Eastern Conference. Some players that are having conversation that may come back. Steph Curry talking about coming back to the Warriors this year to start sometime in the month of March. I guess he's got over the broken hand. And I know that Kevin Durant's been having some shoot-arounds too. But then another player that a lot of people have, kind of mixed emotions about too is Kyrie Irving. He's been sidelined again because of a shoulder injury. So he won't play with the Brooklyn Nets first game after the All-Star break. And I guess that's more trouble he's having with his right shoulder. What's the rush to get back? You're not going to go into the playoffs. Golden State Warriors, there's really no rush for Steph Curry to come back. There's no rush for Durant to come back. These teams are not going to win a championship. But what's it about them that wants to kind of rush it along that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, none of those players said they want to rush it along. You're talking about media outlets saying that these players wanting to come back. Durant is not going to play. When he signed with the Nets, everyone knew that this year was a wash, that he was not going to be on the court. The situation with Steph Curry could have came back a month ago. There's no rush to get him in because the Warriors are tanking, and they're not trying to win. He may play the last month of the season, but he's not going to be impactful. This is par for the course for Kyrie Irving. The New York Nets are always better when he's not in the lineup, just like the Boston Celtics were.
Yeah. Well, we know that Curry broke and we know Durant had the Achilles pull that they said was a calf strain before he pulled it again in the game against Toronto last year in the NBA Finals. Kyrie Irving, missed 26 games during the first season in Brooklyn with an impingement. He got a cortisone shot in December instead of having arthroscopic surgery, and that acknowledged that the surgery might still be necessary. Irving's been sidelined recently with a sprain in a right knee. He's played in just 20 of the Nets' 53 games, and Brooklyn returns from the All-Star break, and they play Thursday in Philadelphia. Maybe this is a stupid question, but is he someone a lot like Andrew Luck that just seems injury-prone? Or is it that a lot of guys are injured, they just don't make it known to media? Big C, your thoughts?
Kyrie Irving has been this way throughout his entire career. You have to look back and see if he's ever played an entire NBA season, which he has not.
Yeah.
He's often been injured. He was injured in Cleveland. He's been injured his whole time in Boston. He's injured now with the Nets.
Yeah.
But the teams have been better with him off the floor than they have with him on the floor.
Really? I mean, obviously, he would have made, I would say he's I won't say Hall of Famer. There's still a lot to go. But he's definitely an all-star player. And I think a lot of the times that he had the same type of baggage, if that makes any sense, that Chris Paul has had, that sometimes they mind too much. People want them to shut up and dribble. But is he any more difficult than anyone else? I think LeBron James barks out a lot of commands and orders. And maybe they can't get along because there were two alpha males barking. But it seemed like Chris Paul came under that same type of scrutiny, that he talked too much, his attitude's a little bit sullen, can't get along with him. I think there's a lot of players like that. Do you think that baggage hangs with him more so than anyone else in the league? Big C, your thoughts?
No, the baggage with him, Charlton, is he doesn't make teammates better. It's not about his mouth. It's about his actions on the court. He wants to handle the ball too much. He doesn't know how to disperse it equally amongst teammates. And like I said, the past two teams he's been with, Charlton, they've been better with him off the floor than they have with him on the floor.
Kemba Walker obviously doing a great job with the Boston Celtics. I think a lot of time, even though Tatum is probably the best player for Boston, but there may be some truth behind that. But I will say that Cleveland did not win their championship without Irving being out there on the floor, and because I remember they just couldn't handle him in the fourth period of that game when they played in Oakland in that Game 7.
But you also got to look, Cleveland was the worst team in the league prior to LeBron showing back up.
Yeah.
And when Kyrie left, Cleveland still went back to the NBA Finals. He didn't make the team any better. LeBron James made the team better. Their only runs to the NBA Final came with LeBron James.
Yeah.
Since Kyrie Irving has left, no team that he has been with has made it to the finals.
Yeah, I know everybody has that thought, and I've heard the same thing about Chris Paul, how he hadn't had that success that a lot of people would have. Maybe because they just don't like their personality. But we'll see what happens. again, I agree with you. Durant, no need to even come back. Of course, he can have shoot-arounds. He was having shoot-arounds last year before he came back too early, and then tore his Achilles heel again, even though they said it was a calf strain at first. We know someone was not telling the truth about that. At the same time, Steph Curry, broken hand. If he comes back, it's not like he had a major injury. He already had those earlier in his career, with his ankles, Big C. So if he comes back, you don't want him shooting the way he's capable of shooting, because you want a higher draft pick, and you can't do that if they start climbing the ladder in the Western Conference. So I look forward to that. Kyrie will be back sometime this month, and we hope that, attitude or not, that they'll get some wins there for the Brooklyn Nets. Thursday's schedule, even though it's out today, Thursday's schedule, Milwaukee will be at Detroit. Miami will be at Atlanta. You have Charlotte will be at Chicago. Brooklyn, just talking about Kyrie Irving, they will be at Philadelphia. I would love to see that game if he was in there healthy. Memphis will be at Sacramento. And in Houston, I still believe it would be Golden State. Curry. Big C, your thoughts?
Steph Curry is not going to play. Like I said, he was healthy enough to come back a month ago. He broke his left hand, not his right hand.
Yeah.
This is about getting the team in position for draft, not trying to make any wins on the season.
Yeah, well, he may shoot right-handed, but he's ambidextrous as a dribbler, so he needs both hands. And still, I think on the back of the mind for Golden State is everybody. And I remember how much people were mad at the organization when Durant had the calf strain, quote-unquote calf strain, and then it came out to be an Achilles tear. They were saying, I can't believe that, and there were some notable NBA players saying that they blamed the Golden State Warriors that they did not force a grown man to sit on the bench. That grown man was the one who decided to play, and there were people that were saying he was encouraged, he was kind of enticed to play, Big C, that he didn't have a mind of his own, and I think maybe that is some of the same stuff being said about Curry, but I want your opinion. I don't know any athletes that play with fear that they're going to get hurt. If you have that fear, then don't even play the game. If you're afraid of everything, don't drive a car. Don't go into the weight room. You may drop the weight bar on your chest. There's just too much talk about let's blame somebody if something goes bad. Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, like I said before, Steph Curry had a simple bone break in his hand. Surgery repaired that a couple days afterwards. He was healthy a month ago. He was cleared. The difference is that this is about winning and not winning, and when athletes want to go on the floor, they can go on the floor.
Yeah.
It's left up to them to make the final decision. The team will always give you their input, their medical staff and everything else.
Yeah.
And then they'll ask you, do you feel that you want to compete? It comes down to the athlete. Everybody has an opinion, just like we do on every show. Shows get ratings because of their opinions, what people are saying.
Yeah.
And everybody's opinion is their own. It's up to the player. When you get players starting to have injecture about what they do and do not want to do as far as a competitive nature, then you got a 100% accuracy.
Yeah.
Up until that, it's all speculation.
All speculation. And again, if you want to play the game. But if you're Steph Curry, don't play, because you really need to move up if you're going to complete the process that they started trying to get a higher draft pick. So I know we finished, first part of the NBA season. They did the big C pause or the big NBA pause or NBA timeout, whatever you want to call it at this point. Just looking at some of the players as we come off of this beautiful All-Star exhibition series. Big C, I really appreciated the way these guys played in the beautiful city of Chicago. Barring any serious injury to anyone other than LeBron James or Giannis Antetokounmpo, winning the award would be a shock. And I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of players at the top of the mind, because they're going to have to turn it up in the second half of the season. I doubt if many of these guys are thinking about becoming an MVP of the league. They first got to get into the playoffs. If they can get a high seed, then it's going to help their team. Giannis, in my opinion, you're not buying Giannis the way maybe a lot of people are buying Giannis. He averages 30 points a game, 13.5 rebounds a game, 1 block a game, 5.8 assists. The Bucks are on pace to win 70-plus games with a better net rating than the 73-win team from 2015-16. But what is it about Giannis that you don't feel is the guy to get them over the hump, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Giannis, I feel right now is the clear-cut MVP of the league. I mean, hands down. LeBron gets the nod because he's always been in the spotlight. He's in L.A. But what Giannis has done with the Bucks this year is much better than what he was last year. He's improved statistically in every category, as well as the team has improved. And I think that's the pure depiction of an MVP is how good do you make your teammates. They lost some players in the offseason.
Yeah.
But they didn't go out in free agency like the Lakers did and try to bring in a bunch of players. They stayed pat with the players that they had in the starting lineup. And he's made this team much better. He was the reigning MVP. And it's hard to knock off the reigning MVP when you have a better season than what you had in the previous year.
Yeah, but to me, so are you buying that? You know, they say that thing about Aaron Rodgers, last 2 minutes, you want the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands. I don't know why, but at the same time, if you're having someone taking the shot, let's say you're down in the last 10 seconds of a game. A lot of kids play this game in the backyard. Do you still trust Giannis? Because it seems like if you get him out of the paint, then you force him to pass the ball, unlike Kareem, who could take that sky hook and knock it down. Do you still trust Giannis? 10 seconds left, and you're down by 1 point, need the basket to win. Big C, your thoughts?
He's proven over the last 2 years that he can knock that down. The thing is, who can stop him defensively?
Yeah, that's a very good point. It happened in the All-Star game, though. But again, that's more of an exhibition. Also, LeBron James, it's amazing that a man can be above 30 years old and still in contention for the best in the league. The Lakers have a 5-game clear lead of the Nuggets, top seed out west. LeBron, and this is not knocking Anthony Davis. I still say, if I'm in the paint, I want LeBron with the ball because he's going to draw the foul. He can shoot the three. He can drive the basket. He can assist. And I think he's amazing. 25 points a game on purpose. He's averaging 10.8 assists per game. Also 7.8 rebounds per game. And when you have a guy like with his talent and he's still trying to get rebounds, no, he's not Kareem. But I like LeBron maybe even more than Giannis because LeBron has a big man, but I still trust LeBron with the ball more than Anthony Davis. If you're saying if you like Giannis as the big guy opposed to Middleton for the Bucks, I would rather have LeBron with the ball in the last 10 seconds, need the basket. He's going to at least get the foul. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they're both going to get the foul, but it's who could be more creative in that. When you look at LeBron, I mean, he does not have as many knockdown shooters as Giannis will have from the outside.
Yeah.
But it's easier for Giannis to get to the basket than it is for LeBron. LeBron has always been a dominant player. But when you just compare the two players statistically, Giannis is the much better player.
Yeah. Well, I hope we don't see them in the finals because I still love that L.A. versus I would love to see Philadelphia get in. I know we've seen Boston a lot, but I would love to just see that matchup. The
Philadelphia
Lakers
doesn't have a chance.
Well, we'll see, Big C. There's always some shenanigans going on. As far as MVP players, James Lights Out Harden out of Artesia High School, Southern California, by way of Arizona State. There was a part of the season where you couldn't find him scoring less than 30-plus points a game. He's cooled off a little bit lately, especially in the All-Star game. Again, that was an exhibition, but he's averaging 29 points per game, since December. But his season average, 35.3 points a game, 7.3 assists. He's also getting around the basket. Harden's getting 6.5 rebounds a game, and you really don't think about that because he was normally waiting for 3 seconds and outside the three-point basket and shooting the ball with about 5 seconds left. But now he's getting down inside the paint. Maybe that smaller lineup's helping them, but he's not really in the ear of people anymore for All-Stars because he's declined slightly. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the MVP is a popularity contest. It's not always the best player, even though that should be included in it. Giannis, when you look at the complete game that he has, James Harden's game is more solid than any true guard in the NBA when you talk about his points per game and his assists and rebounds. He's right there. And if not for Giannis being the reigning MVP and LeBron being in Los Angeles, Harden would be hands down MVP of the league.
Isn't that something? Also on his team, Russell Westbrook, he's playing at an MVP caliber level also. Since I think right around January, he's been just great. And Houston's just 3 games back of Denver off of that number 2 seed in the Western Conference. And here's another player. Talk about NBA expansion. Of course, expansion to Europe. Luka Doncic. He's averaging 28.9 a game, 9.5 rebounds, 8.7 assists per game. Luka is about 1 more pass, 1 more rebound, and 2 more assists from averaging a triple-double. Big C, your thoughts?
He's not going to be winning the MVP because he's a European player. It's going to be a long time before he gets an opportunity to do that. And also playing in Dallas. When you're not in the top 3 in your division, you're not going to be in discussion for the MVP of the league.
Yeah, I mean, he would be something else to be the first European to get that highly coveted honor. Just make a couple of more baskets.
He wouldn't be the first European. Dirk Nowitzki won the MVP already out of Germany.
Out of Germany, so that's very good. So he'd be the number 2 guy coming out of Europe to have that acclaim. Here's another player. They call him the Claw, Kawhi Leonard for the LA Clippers, averaging 27.2 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists. I mean, the man, crunch time, last year I saw it in the NBA Finals. I also saw it when he played down in San Antonio. He ironically had his ankle stepped on or his foot stepped on in a playoff game at Golden State when they were playing, and that caused some injury and had him sit out pretty much the season. But when he came back last year, he put Toronto on his back, and the man hit every clutch shot, it seems, made defensive stops when he had to, and now that he's playing with the Clippers, it seems like he's a little bit in cruise mode, and they call, how their players will rest, load management. But at the end of the day, if he's healthy come the playoffs and he still has his legs under him, then Doc Rivers and Ballmer might be the smartest guys in the universe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Kawhi Leonard's not even in the discussion for the MVP because he doesn't play enough games. To play enough games, you have to be there every night for your team and make a difference overall. If the team is winning when he's not in the lineup, then it proves he's not the MVP in second place in the second or third in the West, and he's not playing enough. So what you do in the playoffs, you got to get there. But during the regular season, it's what you do to get your team there.
It's what you do to get the team there. However, over the last month, Kawhi Leonard's averaging over 30 points a game, better than 48% shooting, and 42% shooting from three-point range. He's also a defensive stopper. He's last year's Finals MVP. If he doesn't get it, you know he's going to be at least knocking on the door of it. So everybody has their own opinion about who's going to be there.
See, that's the same argument you can make about the kid out of Duke that being Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
Does he deserve to be Rookie of the Year, Zion Williams? No. Jay Morant's Rookie of the Year because he's played the entire season. Zion Williams played 10, 11 games, and people saying he should be in the Rookie of the Year discussion.
Well, I disagree with that because if you got one ticket to buy, and you have Zion Williamson playing across town, and you have Morant playing in another city, which one are you really going to go see if you're looking at Game 7 of a conference finals? Which one are you going to go see? And I think most people, I would go see Williamson, even if he only plays half the season. It's not about how many games you play. It's like Durant. If Durant the best shooter in the league, arguably, but what if he doesn't play the whole year? It doesn't matter. If he's the best, he's the best. And to give guys the MVP because they play more games.
If he comes in and scores 50 points in one game, then average 50 points on the season, he should win the scoring title because he scored 50 points in one game.
No.
That's the same argument you're saying because of Zion Williams has been a highlight player. Look at him statistically versus Jay Morant. Jay Morant has the better statistics, and he's put those together all season long throughout the year. You're talking about somebody that you get enamored with because people talk about him on a highlight show, not his productivity on the court.
Well, if scoring leaders wouldn't make any sense, you can add the numbers and see who won the scoring title. But I don't know if anyone that said they'd rather go see Morant play than Williamson play. Even President Obama showed up to watch him play. But everybody has their own choice of what flavor Kool-Aid they like. But NBA is about numbers. And if you got two games to showcase on any night, I would think that the numbers will be off the charts when Zion plays. Irrespective of what media says about him, he just has more upside than Morant. But that's my opinion. Maybe some guys will go see Morant play too. But MVP is not.
Have you looked statistically and compared the two players?
We're not talking about stats. We're talking about, some players
that's what wins awards. Statistics, just like we talked about LeBron, we talked about Giannis. Statistics will determine who's going to be the MVP. You can be the leading scorer in the league, just like you talked about James Harden, but they're not the first-place team in the Western Conference. And yet he's been the leading scorer in the league all year long, and he won't win the MVP. But when you talk about team statistics and what a team does, Memphis is a better team than New Orleans is statistically, and John Morant has better statistics than Zion Williams.
So all that means, Big C, you would go see John Morant play more than Zion, but President Obama and a lot of other guys would go see Williams. And that's
he doesn't have a vote, though.
But he may not have a vote, but I'm telling you what people want to see, and they're not trying to make a plan to go see Morant play, but they do it for Williamson. And that's all been created from high school, even at Duke. But even just closing out that argument, Anthony Davis, if the Lakers win even the Western Conference Championship, I'm not even talking the NBA Finals, if the Lakers win, they got to have Anthony Davis, and he has to step up. I know they've been in the playoffs once when they were with New Orleans. I think they were swept by Portland. So that's what people say about him. But he needs more time in the league. But from what I see in Davis, he's a must-see player. He got to show up in the playoffs. I think that gives the Lakers a chance. Of course, LeBron's going to be there. Damian Lillard. I feel bad for Portland because Portland had their greatest season in a long time last year, and they were swept in the Western Conference Finals by the Golden State Warriors, and they were all banged up with the Golden State Warriors. And then for the final thought, Jimmy Butler, the main reason that the Heat might be the biggest surprise team of the season, but his numbers aren't there right now. But if they get into at least the Eastern Conference Finals, I think he has to have a big season also. It's all fair and love and war. Everybody has their opinion. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about the world of college basketball. I know you love barbecue down in Texas, but they have another good reason to start watching some college basketball in Texas. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And the app that I really love is by Google or Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way that's going with Big C Sports. Also launching a real estate channel for real estate brokers looking to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on television. And as I talk to my brokers, they're really excited about that. That's coming in the spring of 2020. We talk about Texas. What do you like about Texas? Texas is a big state. For the most part, it's flat. It's humid. It has a lot of cows, Big C. But lately, they've been doing something that has been getting the attention of the world of college basketball. Waco, Texas, the most exciting place to be with two dominant programs. Waco, Texas, Big C, not Dallas. Your thoughts?
Well, Waco has taken over the landscape of college basketball here in Charleston this year. When you think about the men's and women's program, you think about the Big 12. Waco, Texas, where the Baylor Bears are playing. The men's program last night set a record for 23 consecutive Big 12 wins.
Yeah.
That's the most ever in Big 12 history, 23 consecutive conference wins, Charlton. And they're the number 2 ranked team in the country, and they're going to be taking on the number 3 ranked team in the country this weekend on Saturday, the Kansas Jayhawks.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the Baylor Bears have just been dominant the past 2 seasons in men's college basketball, and they're one of the favorites to make it to Atlanta in the Final Four in March Madness. Then on the flip side, you look at the Lady Bears. The Lady Bears and their head coach, Kim Mulkey, became the fastest coach in college basketball history last night to reach 600 wins in her career.
Wow.
And she did it in an astounding fashion, Charlton. You think about it, her record as a head coach, and she's also won 3 NCAA ladies titles with the Lady Bears, Charlton. She is 600 and 100 in her career. And so in 700 games, Charlton, she has gotten to 600 victories, the fastest of any college basketball coach, men and women, in the history of college basketball.
And that's amazing. And Kansas may just knock off Baylor, and if they knock them off, it might be the best thing for Baylor. They haven't lost a game since they lost their opening season game to the University of Washington Huskies, and then the Huskies have fallen off a little bit in the Pac-12. But when you think about Baylor University also, you think if you're going into Texas, that you go definitely down to Austin, Texas, because University of Texas program has been amazing over the years. And then you may think even go down to College Station and follow Texas A&M. I remember TCU back in the day, they expanded their football stadium. Their basketball has been pretty decent, but football is really the reason they were known. SMU, since they lost the football program back in the day, they've never come back to what they were. University of Houston, same thing. I remember seeing the Houston Cougars, their basketball program in college has been great over the years. And then Texas, they were really great when they had Kevin Durant because he could shoot the lights out. But now Baylor is doing this thing. Also, they were the Big 12 champions in the football season, too. So a lot of good things happening at that university. When you look at 2 great stories in sports, there's a lot of them. Number 1, POTUS came to California, and he went down to a town called Bakersfield, which there was a movie made about Bakersfield High School. And back in the day, Robin Williams was part of that, too. But they had this thing where it's in the heart of the Central California. the largest agricultural region in the world, between maybe Bakersfield, which is just north of the Grapevine Mountains, all the way up to say Redding, California. And they had this ICE thing where they were collecting people and sending them back to Mexico, allegedly, Big C. And there's been a huge attack on brown-skinned people that come from Mexico. Well, down in the Bakersfield area, there's a lot of people that grow vegetables, and the migrant workers would mine the fields. So now a lot of them have been chased out. So he shows up saying that I'm going to bring more water to the farmers. They need workers and water, basically. I just thought that was funny. So that's one of my top stories of the day. But also the St. Louis Blues, and you have Jay Brownmeiser and NASCAR's Ryan Newman. They might be in the top 3 news stories of the day, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, they are the top 2 stories in sports when you look at everything else that's going on in a slow day in sports, but they're still the hot topics. You think about Bo Meister, Charlton, the forward from the St. Louis Blues who collapsed last week on the bench, actually had a cardiac arrest, and thanks to the first responders, Charlton, they were able to save his life. He is now recovering at home and hopes to be back on the ice sometime soon. I hope he doesn't rush it back, but want to give a thanks to all the first responders out there, not just the ones that are at sporting events, Charlton, but those who serve the great nation as we give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. Yeah. Everyone needs to think about the first responders in this country, Charlton, because they do a tireless job in saving lives every day. And then we think about Ryan Newman, who were in the Daytona 500, that horrific crash just on Monday, Charlton. Yeah. He was released from the hospital today and able to walk out under his own power, Charlton, with his 2 daughters at his side. And he's on his way home. So hopefully both of these guys will have a nice, healthy recovery, Charlton, and eventually get back to the sport that they love sometime soon.
It's amazing when you think about that, because the emergency workers in the United States of America hospitals, whether they're driving an ambulance, the first responders, they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They never close shop. They're always open, and we don't even think about them until we need to call 911 or until someone has an emergency. Really appreciate the work that they do in really saving lives, Big C. I wanna also just bring up a thought, not as serious, but when you think about it, does Patrick Mahomes have the best 3 seasons to start a career in the NFL history? I mean, did he? There are a lot of people that say yes. Some people say no. Again, it just depends on who they like and what they like. There's a lot of linemen that would say, well, maybe some linemen had the best 3 years to start a season, but they're not well known. Mahomes has only played 31 regular season games. Mahomes is the youngest quarterback to win the Super Bowl MVP. Mahomes, the youngest player to win the regular season MVP and Super Bowl. He could retire tomorrow. I mean, please don't do that. But he has a more decorated career than almost anyone who ever played in the NFL if you consume it over 3 years, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, what we've seen is phenomenal. We've seen history in the last 3 years, actually the last 2 years in the NFL for Mr. Mahomes. And, we see the future of the NFL. And we want to see him do this for at least another decade, Charlton. But for what he has done already, he has been historic.
When you bring up Patrick Mahomes, how does he rank? I mean, obviously, he's a new flavor of the month right now. It's amazing how people can turn the page from Carson Wentz, how they turn the page for him. They turn the page from Jared Goff. They turn the page from Matt Ryan. They even turn the page, well, they're still reading the page on Dak Prescott because he hasn't gotten a contract yet, but Goff and Wentz had. They were making the same kind of noise about those guys that did not win a Super Bowl, Big C, and now Patrick Mahomes is here. So does he have that staying power? Because last year they were talking Wentz, they were talking Jared Goff, and they were talking Ryan, they were talking Brady. Mahomes came up on the picture, but he wasn't the top story. And now you have Jackson competing, with Jackson being the league MVP unanimously. Does he have that staying power? In your opinion, Big C, your thoughts?
Patrick Mahomes has more staying power than any of those players that you just named, because we saw potential greatness in the one game he played in his rookie year, the last game of the season. And then when he got the full reins after the Chiefs traded Alex Smith, there was lights out and no look behind. When we saw what he did in his first true year as a starter in the NFL, with the record numbers he put up, 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards passing, a league MVP, and being robbed of potentially getting to the Super Bowl by the officials on 2 separate occasions in that AFC Championship game, Charlton. Not only that, but to start out his 3rd year in the league at the record pace that he was starting out prior to getting the ankle and knee injury, but being able to come back from those injuries which we have not seen another quarterback be able to do, and then lead your team to a Super Bowl title in just 31 games as a starter, Charlton. That's unparalleled by any quarterback in NFL history.
Well, let's examine that because we have a fickle society. One day you're up, and one day they're saying, well, the guy's washed up. Again, just mentioning those games, Jared Goff, he was the flavor of the month last year. Carson Wentz was the flavor of the month. We know Matt Ryan. Matthew Stafford, they keep trying to say that he's wasting his time in Detroit. Maybe Detroit's wasting their time with Matthew Stafford because they want to put them in that same echelon. But I want to ask your opinion. I want to take a look at the top 10 best starts through 3 seasons in the NFL history because, again, everybody they can be myopic and look at only their region of the country. But number 10, I'll just bring up some names and you can give me your thoughts on them. I would say Dick Night Train Lane. In the 100 seasons of the NFL, there's only been 75 instances of a player intercepting 10 or more passes in a season. Lane did it twice in his first 2 seasons. Lane set a record 1952 as a rookie with 14 interceptions, and that record still stands in his 3rd season. He had 10 interceptions to lead the league, 27 through his first 3 seasons, Big C. Dick Night Train Lane, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Dick Night Train Lane, and that 14 interceptions still stands as an NFL record in a 12-game season. So you think about how much a ball hawk he was, and then 2 years later, able to come up with 10 interceptions in that season. You think about the 27 interceptions that he had in his first 3 seasons in the NFL, Charlton?
Yeah.
If he was playing today's NFL, he would rank 7th on the active player list with just the interceptions he had in his first 3 seasons.
That's absolutely amazing. You would think they would stop throwing to his side, Big C, especially the offensive coordinators. So as we take a look at the top 10 best starts through 3 seasons in NFL history, Dick Night Train Lane obviously makes that list. I would say number 9 on the list also, the great sweetness, Walter Payton, almost got left off due to his forgettable rookie season. He only had 679 yards rushing, but his 2nd and 3rd seasons, that's when Payton made his name known. He had 3,242 yards rushing, 27 rushing touchdowns. He carried that terrible Bears offense. They were like an offensive hibernation, but he carried them, Big C, in his 3rd season. The Sweetness also rushed for then NFL record 275 yards against the Minnesota Vikings, and he was named NFL MVP that season also, Big C. Your thoughts?
And, you think about the greatness of Sweetness, Charlton. This is a guy that did not play on a winning team his first 3 years in the NFL. And as a rookie, he was beaten out by then Terry Robisky, the 2nd-round draft pick that the Bears had drafted out of the University of Missouri, a running back.
Yep.
But eventually when he got into the starting lineup, you saw where he had just under 700 yards rushing, but he exploded on the scene in his next 2 years in the NFL and became the dominant rusher that everyone expected out of Jackson State University, Charlton, when the Bears took him number 7 overall in the 1st round that year.
Yep.
But when he retired, he was the NFL's all-time leading rusher. But he showed his greatness, Charlton, because he worked hard every day for a team that did not put the tools around him to be better.
That's amazing when they call him Sweetness. The way that he ran, he made it look so effortlessly, and the fact that he wasted away a lot of the time in Chicago, they never really put the team around him that they could have had the great Sweetness Walter Payton. Also on that list, and again, everybody has their own opinion when you look at the top 10 best starts through 3 seasons in the history of the NFL. This guy's on the list, and some people would say he's number 1, but I got him at number 8 right now. The great Lawrence Taylor, Big C. He said he wanted to go out there and play like a pack of wild dogs, and only he would know what that means. But through 3 seasons, Taylor had a Rookie of the Year award and 2nd NFL Defensive Player of the Year award. The rest of his career went pretty well, too. He had a streak of 6 straight first-team All-Pro nods in his career, and he was really one of the players that no matter what team you're on, no matter what region of the country, people thought that he made their first ballot Hall of Fame. Based on your thoughts?
Well, when he talked about the pack of wild dogs, that was before Michael Vick's time. So he made that statement before Michael Vick was old enough to be in the NFL. But when you think about how Lawrence Taylor changed the dynamics of that position of the rush in NFL, Charlton, he was one of the most dominant players of his era. I got to put Derek Thomas right up there with him as an impact defensive player. But what you saw with Lawrence Taylor in revolutionizing that New York Giants defense under Bill Parcells and allowing the rest of his teammates to run free, he was an unstoppable force.
Yeah, he also had another bookend with him too. I think Banks. They had just a dominant defense with the New York Giants back in the day. No wonder they won Super Bowls. They did it because of their defense, not necessarily because of their offense. And another great player that I saw play in college when I saw the great Earl Campbell, put him at 7 on the list. 7 players since 1950 were NFL first-team All-Pro in each of their first 3 seasons. 7 of them. Earl Campbell is the only number 1 overall pick on the list. Earl had 3 rushing titles in his first 3 seasons. He led the league in rushing touchdowns twice. He won the NFL MVP in his second season, and he also had a head-on collision that I'll never forget with the great late Jack Tatum with the Oakland Raiders that I'll never forget as long as I live. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Earl Campbell, everyone remembers him for that phenomenal game down in the Houston Astrodome on Monday night against the Miami Dolphins when he ran 75 yards to clinch the game. But Earl Campbell was a workhorse. The Tyler Rose, he was a Heisman Trophy winner at the University of Texas, number 1 overall pick of the Houston Texans under Bum Phillips. And he didn't let that city down, Charlton. He put the city of Houston on his back, as well as a lot of NFL defenders onto greatness in the NFL.
I want to ask you before I get on to number 6, Big C. We have enough time to do it. Who does Earl remind you of running? He's definitely not Walter Payton. Definitely not. He wasn't someone, in my opinion, like a Marcus Allen. He was not. Maybe closer to Bo Jackson, in my opinion. But who reminds you of Earl Campbell after Earl Campbell retired that ran the football like him? Big C, your thoughts?
No one ran the ball like Earl Campbell. The most memorable run for me was Earl Campbell because he had a tearaway jersey. There was a run they were playing the Los Angeles Rams down there in the Astrodome, and he ran over linebacker Isaiah Robinson. He put his head in his chest and put him on his back. And Isaiah wasn't a small man. He was about 6'5", 245 pounds, but Earl ran over him just like he was a Pop Warner player. But Earl was a unique runner of his own.
Yeah, I'm sure he was better than Jerome Bettis, who's still playing pickup football with a lot of guys that can't tackle him. But definitely got to have Earl on that list. Number 6, Big C. You think about it, and this guy said, "Pay me. You want me on the team? Pay me." That was a great Eric Dickerson, Big C, part of that Pony Express down at SMU back in the day. Here are Eric Dickerson's rushing yardage totals. In his first 3 seasons, 1,808 yards, 2,105 yards, 1,248 yards. He led the NFL in rushing each of his first 2 seasons. His 2,105-yard season in 1984, it still ranks as the number 1 all-time, and his 3rd season includes a 248-yard playoff game against the Dallas Cowboys. That's why many people still consider him the best running back ever, at least from Texas. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in his first 4 years in the NFL, Eric Dickerson gained some 8,000 yards rushing, and a record that still stands today. And I mean, he came into a contract dispute down at the Los Angeles Rams, but I mean, he was, poetry in motion running the football. It was something that we had never seen, a 6'4" running back with sprinter speed charting out of the backfield, and he changed the dynamics. John Robertson structured an offense around the running ability of Eric Dickerson, and the Rams benefited from it, Charlton. They just never had a quarterback between Chuck Long and Dieter Brock that could get them past the NFC Championship game, which they ran into the 85 Bears.
Yeah, I still remember that. I think they were even shut out by the Bears. I remember it was so cold and foggy, it was hard to see that game, but they played that game in the Windy City. I'll never forget seeing that. But I still remember him. Any comparisons to the great Eric Dickerson since he retired? Any guys even remind you a little bit of Eric Dickerson? Big C, your thoughts?
You're not going to find a 6'4" running back, Charlton, that gained some 8,000 yards in his first 4 years in the league. I mean, when you talked about Earl Campbell and you talked about Eric Dickerson, they were unique players of the cloth that they were cut in, Charlton, and there's not a duplicate of them.
That's high acclaim. There's so many great running backs out there in the land, but we'll have to say, definitely agree with you. Now, when it comes to having some receivers that can make it easier for a running back and can make a quarterback look like an all-pro, maybe even Hall of Famer, I look at number 5 on the list, the great Randy Moss. 1998 Rookie of the Year. We talked about forever. We might never see another receiver have a debut like him again. Big C, it's possible that the greatest rookie season ever, regardless of position, Randy had the most receiving yards, 4,163, and receiving touchdowns, 43, through 3 seasons. In NFL history, he put up at least 1,300 yards and double-digit touchdowns in each of his first 3 seasons. And he's also caught the football from several different quarterbacks. So it didn't matter how good that quarterback was. He made them all look good, Big C. Your thoughts?
And that showed the greatness of Randy Moss. 17 teams passed over Randy Moss in the first round of that draft, Charlton, but he came back and made every one of them pay. He was the most uncoverable receiver most likely in NFL history. Statistics prove that no one could cover him. And he didn't have those all-pro quarterbacks hanging around him and playing on championship teams. But Randy Moss was the most unique receiver ever in NFL history. It's just unfortunate his career ended the way it did. He would have been the greatest of all time.
And even though he had different quarterbacks and different teams, I remember coming out of Marshall, he could have played, I believe, at Florida State and Notre Dame, but some things happened, and he ended up putting Marshall, on making them relevant again. But any receiver since Randy Moss has stepped down that you say, you know what, that guy reminds me of Randy, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as you said in the opening, Charlton, regardless of the position, he could be the greatest player in NFL history in the first 3 years that he came into the league. No one has ever duplicated that.
Yeah, definitely amazing. We're still talking about it, and again, everybody has their own opinion. But if you look at the NFL, it's been 100 years. We're taking a look at the best starts, the best 10 starts through 3 seasons, the first 3 seasons of NFL football. I'm going to put number 4 on that list, the great man out of Pennsylvania, Big C, Dan Marino, number 4 on that list. Marino's first 3 seasons, they were tough to dispute. You think about it. He had 98 touchdowns during that stretch. Nobody else has more than 86. The Miami Dolphins were 33-8 in his starts, and Marino won MVP in 1984, which was one of the most famous seasons in NFL history. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was one of the most famous seasons in NFL history, and if he had gone on to win the Super Bowl that year against the San Francisco 49ers, Charlton, he most likely would be number 1 on everybody's list. And you talked about his touchdowns that he threw in 86 is the closest. That's Patrick Mahomes right behind him at 86. But Dan Marino changed the face of the NFL the way we were used to seeing that from young rookie quarterbacks coming into the league. He took over for David Woodley down in Miami, and the rest was NFL history.
It's amazing how even at the University of Pittsburgh, they were a good team, but there's still, when I think about Pittsburgh, I still think about Tony Dorsett coming out of that university on the offense. But I know Dan Marino right there. Dorsett has the Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys, but 2 great players that come out of that great university. Big C, as we get down, we're talking about the first 3 years, the top 10 players in the history of the NFL, the first 3 years. We're at number 3 now, and again, everybody has their own opinion. But I want to put Kurt Warner, like Patrick Mahomes. He set back a little bit because of his first, season. He didn't produce that much. He had 39 yards in 1998 as a backup, but in his first season as a starter, that Warner shocked the NFL world. In fact, in 1999, he shocked the NFL universe. They become known as the greatest show on turf. The Rams, he won MVP and Super Bowl MVP. He still is the last player to do both in the same season. If we were counting his first full season as a starter, then you could add a 2001 MVP and an NFC title game. Because I think based on how he started, he was bagging groceries to go to Super Bowl MVP and now Hall of Famer. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he was doing more than bagging groceries. He played in the Arena League. He was in training camp with the Green Bay Packers. This is a guy that paid his dues to get to where he was. He was a backup quarterback behind Trent Green, who had a preseason injury the next year, and all of a sudden he got his day in the sun. And to have an offense named after you in the NFL, the greatest show on turf, that speaks volume about what Kurt Warner did with the superstars he was surrounded by. He made everyone better. And when you think about it, he played with 4 other potential Hall of Famers, Charlton, in that offense, an offensive lineman, 2 receivers, and a running back. But Kurt Warner not only did it in Los Angeles, Charlton, after having 3 of the greatest first years in NFL history, he went on to take the Arizona Cardinals to a Super Bowl also.
That's right, and he's also doing his thing on TV with the NFL Network. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And the 2 apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic. and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. Also on the real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020, getting involved in more e-commerce to help people around the country, brokers looking for 100 of them just to list some properties on TV. I want to finish up on our list, and again, everybody has their own opinion, so don't throw any arrows this way. I know some people say, no, that's not the order, but again, just our opinion. Finishing up top 10 best starts through 3 seasons in NFL history, Big C. Coming up to the final 2. Number 2, the great Patrick Mahomes. Only 13 men have ever won a regular season MVP and Super Bowl MVP. It's even hard to compare Mahomes to others who've had 3 full seasons as a starter, but it almost doesn't matter. His accomplishments, Big C, his 2 seasons as a starter are almost unmatched in NFL history. It's simply not too early to wonder if you're watching the early stages of the greatest NFL career ever, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, of every player in the NFL, he is the only player in the NFL, regardless of which team you root for, you will change the channel to watch. What he has done in the last 2 years in the NFL, we talked about what Dan Marino did prior to having the NFL games on every channel 24 hours a day. What Patrick Mahomes has done to succeed him. He is second behind Marino only in touchdown passes, Charlton, since he has entered the league in the first 3 years. But Patrick Mahomes has won the Super Bowl, something that Dan Marino hasn't done. And he's on the verge of creating a dynasty there in Kansas City that everybody wants to watch.
And you know something about Patrick Mahomes also, for quarterbacks of color, we've talked about, so many things, even going to the Rooney Rule. There was a time that African-American quarterbacks were ostracized, just like coaches have been ostracized. But you can complain or you can be a part of the solution. And I guess the part of the solution is just be excellent. Just keep showing up. Everybody has an opinion, and not everybody's going to like you, so don't even try to do that. But I really think that he will really make a household name even 50 years after today's show, Big C. Number 1, as we finish up our conclusion of the first 3 seasons over the last 100 years of the NFL, looking at players that have had the best starts through 3 seasons in NFL history in the universe. And I say number 1 is the great Jim Brown. Let's never forget how amazing Jim Brown's career was. In 3 seasons, Brown had 3 rushing titles, 3 first-team All-Pros. He led the NFL in rushing touchdowns 3 times. He won MVP twice, still the only player as a rookie ever to win. His 127.3 rushing yards per game in 1958. His second season, it set an NFL record that still ranks 10th all time. I would still say that Jim Brown's the best football player in the universe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you talk about ranking 10th all time, that's on the rushing list, Charlton. But when you talk about that 127 yards a game rushing on a season, no other running back has ever done that. And you think about he's the only running back in NFL history to average over 100 yards a game rushing throughout his entire career. So Jim Brown's greatness speaks among itself as far as what he did, as far as establishing African-American players in the NFL. And if you look at this list that you just named, Charlton, 8 of those 10 players on that list are African-Americans. But I want to go one step further. To me, the most impactful player, African-American player in the history of the NFL, and you don't find him on many lists, Charlton. His name is Fritz Pollard. He was the first African-American quarterback to actually play in the NFL back in the 30s with a team, Charlton. But Fritz Pollard broke the color barrier for African-American players in the NFL. So whether his career was 1 day, 3 years, or 5 years, Fritz Pollard is the most influential and African-American player to ever play in the NFL.
And that makes him one of the most influential persons in the universe. Really appreciate that. Everybody has their opinion, but I love just paying homage to some of the great ones that have played this game and made it so much better in the way that it is today. Big C, we've talked about so much in the world of sports, even politics, some guys at the White House, some pardons that happened, earlier this week. Eddie Bartolo, one of them, with POTUS, now making his West Coast tour. Storming for the black votes. He's had more blacks in the office to celebrate a pardon of a white man than he's ever had in his administration since he's been in office, and I think that's telling. At the same time, everybody has the right to vote for who they want to vote for. I love our list of looking at college basketball. Will Kansas knock off Baylor this weekend? We'll see. And also, I will know we'll do some more on the fight coming up in Vegas over the weekend. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I want to look at this day in black history. On February 19th, 1943, the Tuskegee Airmen, the distinguished Tuskegee Airmen, entered into World War II, and they became the most successful wing squadron in World War II history, representing the American Air Force, Charlton. And they did not ever lose a battle in World War II. The most decorated group of historical airmen in World War II history were African Americans.
And you can watch them there's a movie called Red Tails that chronicles what they did, the Tuskegee Airmen, and you can follow them. You can also find out every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.